Since 2020, my research team and I have been conducting extreme high elevation surveys of mammals in the Andes. And the goals of this research are, number one, to determine the upper elevational limits of mammalian life, and then two, to understand how these animals have evolved the ability to survive at those extreme limits. So during the first few years of this project, we conducted most of our elevational surveys on the western slope of the Andes in northern Chile and western Bolivia. And since 2023, we've started conducting surveys on the eastern slope. So one of the really fascinating things about the eastern slope of the Andes, especially in northwestern Argentina, is that as you ascend in elevation, you pass through these really abrupt ecological transitions from tropical forest into what's called Chaco Serrano forest, and then into a subtropical desert biome called Monte, and then finally into the high elevation Puna grassland. So to date, we've conducted base to summit surveys of well over 30 Andean peaks with elevations above 5,800 meters. And during the past 2 years, we've focused our efforts on a set of 7 peaks in northwestern Argentina. So most of these peaks are extremely remote and difficult to access, and the approaches are extremely long. So in some cases, like with Nevado de Cachi, to conduct our elevational survey, we had to adopt an alpine style approach where we established an initial base camp, and then we packed everything up on foot, and over the course of several days, we then established additional camps and additional trapping stations at progressively higher elevations along the route to the summit. And so in the case of Nevado de Cachi, on day 3, we left our high camp at 2 a.m. We reached the summit before midday, and then on our descent, we broke camp, collected all our traps, and then in a single marathon trek, we made it back to the initially established base camp before dark that same day. We used the same alpine-style approach in our elevational survey of Volcan Quechua. So we established a base camp at roughly 4,000 meters and used that as our initial trapping site, and then packed everything up, and over the course of several days, we again set new camps and new trapping stations at higher and higher elevations en route to the summit. So one of the fascinating things about Volcan Quechua is that this volcano is one of a number of 6,000 meter Andean peaks that was first ascended by the Incas over 500 years ago. So on the very summit of the peak, at over 6,100 meters, the Incas constructed this elaborate ceremonial structure and tomb, which was used as part of a sacrificial ritual called Capacocha, which revolves around human sacrifice. So in 2024, we set our sights on Volcan Antofalla, which is considered to be the most remote 6,000 meter peak in the Andes. And Antofalla is another one of these sacred peaks that was also ascended by the Incas. So in this case, on the very summit, the Incas constructed this ceremonial platform that consists of a roughly 9 by 5 meter ring of stones with the remnants of what used to be a stone altar in the center. So peaks like Antofalla are seldom visited by mountain climbers, and so very few people have seen these Incan structures in person. And aside from peaks like Quechua and Antofalla that were first ascended by the Incas, the first ascents of many of the other 6,000 meter peaks in the region only occurred within the past 30 years or so. The high elevation Argentine Puna is virtually unexplored by biologists. So the results of our biological surveys have provided really valuable information about the native mammal fauna and the elevational distributions of different species. So one thing that we've learned with all of these Andean surveys is that animals are living at far higher elevations than anyone previously supposed. And what we've learned from our experiments to date is that some of these high elevation species have evolved the physiological ability to tolerate levels of oxygen deprivation that are far more extreme than anything that humans are able to handle. So these high elevation animals represent a really great research system for addressing questions about evolutionary adaptation to extreme environments.